Hi, yes, I'm Katarina Kuhnert. Thank you for having me. And I live in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, which is on Inuvialu, and Northern Métis lands. And so I'd just like to say that I'm very pleased to be joined here today by the Minister of Environment, Thompson, who is also, I believe, the Minister for Youth, and also a member of Legislative Assembly, Katarina Kuhnert, from the government of the Northwest Territories, as well as some of their colleagues from the Northwest Territories as well. So thank you for being here and for supporting our presentation today. So I'll be talking about the Mackenzie River watershed today. So my family has farmed on the same tract of land in the Peace River County of Alberta, Canada, for over 100 years. And Canada as a country is only 154 years old, so for us this is a long time as white settler Canadians. And our family loves this land. On my mom's side of the family, my ancestors came from England in 1634, and from Scotland and Ireland in 1850, from Germany in 1895, and they cleared the forest for this farmland in 1915. But before my ancestors were on this land, which is here in the Peace River County in the Mackenzie River watershed, there were Cree and Dene people who were the ones who first decided that there would be peace on this river. My family has loved this land for 100 years, but Indigenous people have loved and protected this water for since time immemorial. And if you follow the Peace River north, it flows into the Mackenzie River, which is the fourth largest river in the world, and it's sometimes called the Cold Amazon, and it empties into the Arctic Ocean. And I was born on this watershed in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, which is right up here. Maybe the arrow should go a little bit further, which is 1,600 kilometers north of our family farm in Alberta. It's, as I mentioned, Inuvialu, and Métis lands. And I was baptized in the water that comes from the Mackenzie River. It's the same water that flows from this 100-year-old farm and that nourishes me as I live now in Inuvik. Inuvik is on permafrost, which covers 24% of the land in the Northern Hemisphere, which holds hundreds of gigatons of carbon dioxide and methane in the permafrost. And for us, 1.5 degrees Celsius is a tipping point for that carbon to be released from the permafrost. Before passing from the Peace River, from where my family farm is, to Inuvik, where the water will then empty into the Arctic Ocean, the water passes one of the largest industrial projects in the world. The Alberta Oil Sands are the world's third largest proven oil reserve, with a potential 170 billion barrels of oil and the potential for over $1 trillion more. $243 billion has been invested in this industry, and each year the government subsidizes the extraction of bitumen from clay, water, and sand by hundreds of millions of dollars. If we were to burn all this oil, the temperature rise could be 0.4 degrees Celsius from Alberta alone. And seeing as we're already locked into about 1.1 degrees of warming, this would reach the permafrost tipping point of 1.5 degrees Celsius from Alberta alone. I have family members who work in oil and gas fields. We take part in this extraction that threatens the watershed that we drink from and that nourishes our family farm. We love the land, but we don't always protect it. So I'll stay here maybe a bit with this picture of the oil sands here. So what I want to say is that the Canadian economy is based on extraction. The extraction of Indigenous peoples off their lands, the extraction of resources from those lands, and the extraction of labor from our citizens and from migrant workers to access those resources. And these actions have concrete impact on the climate. In the Koch et al. 2019 article, Earth System Impacts of the European Arrival and the Great Dying in the Americas after 1492, they demonstrate how European colonization in North and South America resulted in the deaths of 56 million Indigenous people by 1600, causing such a large land use change that it resulted in climate impacts that changed the global climate by 0.15 degrees Celsius by 1610. This means that Europeans caused global climate impacts through genocide and colonization 2 centuries before the Industrial Revolution. Reflect on that. 56 million people died because of European colonization in the Americas, and the scale of loss and damage was so large that it changed the global climate. The church, through papables, terra nullius, the doctrine of discovery, we contributed to indigenous lands being claimed by Christians in the name of Christ Jesus. The Christian church was instrumental to this legacy of over 500 years of colonization, 56 million deaths, and extensive loss and damage ever since. In 2015, my family farm celebrated its 100th year anniversary. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada concluded its mandate to inform Canadians about the abuses our government and our churches perpetrated against Indigenous peoples. In 2015, our National Lutheran Church repudiated and renounced the doctrine of discovery as fundamentally opposed to the gospel and our understanding of the inherent rights and dignities received by God. In 2015, our national church signed a resolution for climate justice, which caused us to take direct actions such as divesting from fossil fuels, working towards becoming carbon neutral by 2050, encouraging churches to become green faith communities, reducing single-use plastics, and engaging with land-back movements to get Indigenous lands back into Indigenous hands. In 2015, the Paris Agreement was developed at COP21. The National Lutheran Church called on the Canadian government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, invest in a just transition to a green economy, and honor the rights of Indigenous peoples. Canada decided to work towards becoming carbon neutral by 2050. In 2015, we felt this shift in our church, in our society, in our country, in our world, but we're still here in 2021 knowing that we haven't risen to the challenge in front of us and grieving all that is left undone. We understand the importance and the urgency of our ability to change. We are just struggling to do it. But in Old Crow, Yukon, they're being much more ambitious than us. Our neighbors in this Bunchik-Wichin community in Old Crow, Yukon have declared a climate emergency. They're switching from diesel power to solar, to wind power, and to biomass. They have declared that they will work towards becoming carbon neutral by 2030. Investing in reconciliation is the best climate justice action that our church has a part in, and Indigenous communities are leading our country in energy transition. They've contributed the least, but they are more invested and ambitious than us, and they have been more resilient than we have ever had to be. I'm truly humbled by the actions of our neighbors in Old Crow, Yukon. For Canada to have an energy transition from our fossil fuel-dependent economy, we have to leave our attitude of domination in the past. We can't just transition our energy, we have to transition our power. Canadians, Christians, Lutherans, Indigenous people, and the lands and waters that surround, support, and sustain us, we are all connected as we approach this new energy economy. We must learn from our history as we change our future, and the land is witnessing our accountability. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Paul Allen. Paul has lived and worked with renewable energy technologies for over 30 years and trained as electrical and electronic engineer. Paul joined the Center for Alternative Technology in '88, helping to develop a wide range of renewable energy systems, including solar and medical systems. Paul has led the groundbreaking Zero Carbon Britain research for over 14 years, liaising with the government, business, public sector, and the arts. Paul has also regularly presents updates on his work at the COP conferences, and Paul is also a good friend of mine, so welcome.
Croeso Genovan Technology Ange. Welcome to the Center for Alternative Technology. So, it's a real honour to be here today to share, it's my personal story. Basically, I arrived at the Center for Alternative Technology as an 18-year-old who'd spent a lot of his time campaigning against what we thought was wrong, trying to stop nuclear expansion, trying to stop energy waste. But then when I arrived, it was an incredible group of people who were thinking very differently from the mainstream, who were working on the solutions. So it was uplifting to be part of the solution. So I said to them, how can I get a job here? How can I come and work here? And they said, well, what we need are engineers, so go and get yourself a formal education as an engineer and come back. And we'll very happily make you part of it. But looking back now, as CAT is coming up to its 50th anniversary, because it was started well before I arrived, it's important to reflect on just how far apart from mainstream thinking it was at that time. It was very different, where we were deliberately trying to reshape our relations with technology to make technology work better for the human, but make it work within the limits of the planet as well. But it's fascinating now to see how that has changed, how the mainstream is now much, much more in tune. The CAT team produced the very first alternative energy strategy for the UK back in 1977. Now you see the graph with the vertical lines, that was the business as usual. Using more energy was good for the economy, it was good for Britain. So the plan was just to use more and more and more. But the bright thinkers at that time said, no, we have to use energy more efficiently and switch to cleaner sources, which is the dotted line of what we suggested. It was poles apart from mainstream thinking. But slowly but surely, that has become the norm. So we released our first Zero Carbon Britain report in 2007 to mark the 30th anniversary of that first report. Because our neighbour up the road was Sir John Horton, who was director of the Met Office, he'd been the co-chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and he helped us understand that of the challenges ahead, climate was going to be a big one. And at that time, the official target was a 60% reduction by 2050. We understood that we had to go to zero. So we launched the first report in Parliament, we shared it with the media, we got coverage in The Guardian, and within 6 weeks, the Liberal Democrat Party, which is the third largest party, launched their own Zero Carbon Britain, taking a global lead. So we began to influence mainstream politics. So over the past 15 years, we've delved more and more into the detail. Because if you're going to offer a scenario for what Britain could be like if we get to zero, you need to do hourly modelling. And that's very complex. And we decided we wouldn't just do hourly modelling for 1 year, because some years it's really cold and not windy, other years it's quite warm and very windy. So we used 10 years worth of data to model what it would be like. And the most recent report, Rising to the Climate Emergency, brings together all of that, I suppose, deep research. Now, doing a national scenario helps you think across disciplines. It's not just about solar panels and electric vehicles. It's about insulating houses. It's about how we move ourselves around on public transport. It's about food, diets, and land use. But building that endpoint vision, one possible endpoint vision to show what we could do, helps us imagine the world anew. Helps us bring it to life in our heads, as Brian Eno once said. To change the world, we need to bring it to life in our heads, then we can bring it to life in the real world. So we launched it, first one in the all-party parliamentary climate change group in Parliament, and people were going, zero carbon? That's very strange. But now, as more and more scientists have woken up to the data, it's becoming normal. So it's sticking to that vision of what you have, of what you believe needs to happen, bringing it to life and sharing it. And I was honoured to be invited to COP14 in Poznan to share this, to begin to get the COP process thinking about zero carbon. But back then, it was a fringe, it was in the corner, so to speak, but now just sticking to that vision and sharing that vision and working with other people, particularly the climate scientists like Kevin Anderson, who are telling the truth about what the science is saying. It's so exciting to see it moving into the mainstream. And it's good to think not just about how we insulate the houses, how we install the wind turbines. I've been very, very pleased to be part of this group to explore how we think differently, how we feel differently, how we can respond to our feelings and our intuition, which is ever so strong. So one of the things that I think brings it to life for me personally, that I get excited about, is the concept of multi-solving. Because we need to get to absolute zero emissions, we need to do lots and lots of things, big changes in society. But if we adopt a multi-solving mindset, we can do it in a way that actually solves lots of other problems at the same time. We can do it in a way that reduces fuel poverty, that improves health and diets, that gets more active mobility, that gets more clean air in cities. And in doing that, in identifying all the co-benefits, we can show that it's probably one of the most exciting opportunities that humanity has to do this shift. And we can bring in lots of other groups as well. So we've been working with governments, we've been working with over 60 local councils, spirit and connection groups, the Church of Wales, the Church of England are now coming to us for carbon literacy training, but with arts and culture as well, because arts and culture bring the world together, citizens and communities. So exploring the scenario helps us catalyse new thinking, inspire new research, and help reimagine local areas like Telford or Bristol in that zero carbon future, which allows the people who live there to bring it to life. Thinking across silos, I suppose what I'd end with is really the power of a positive vision, because so many people are frightened, so many people are in a dark place because we don't see the leadership, but the power of a positive vision can actually bring about change. And the people I see who are working on that positive vision get something in their hearts. And connecting with nature and being with nature recharges our batteries, and particularly recognising that we are nature, protecting ourselves. So we offer a free resource hub which can connect you with all sorts of good projects and good research. We have an innovation lab that's delving into the deeper problems all the time that aren't yet quite solved, particularly in behaviour change. And we offer zero carbon written training online regularly, all available through the CAT website, cat.org.uk. Power of a positive vision. Thank you very much.
Katarina Allison is the Director of Future Earth Ltd, founded in 2011, and it is specializing in system approaches to the low carbon transition, creating innovative financing solutions for gender equity sustainable development. Clients include Commonwealth Secretariat, UNDP, NGO, private sectors, etc. Catherine describes herself as most comfortable at the sharp end of innovation, social behavior change, and value-based decision-making. Welcome.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you all for coming and being part of this journey. Reflecting on what my illustrious colleagues have said before me, it seems that we are all here because we have realised that things need to shift, both within us, but without us, and out with us. And it seems that we've all resolved to do something. We've taken the trouble to come here today. The four of us here are working in this field. And with that work, with that investment, comes quite some reward. And I think with the planet, we also have some reward ahead of us. And I'm glad to see all of the presentations are moving from the problematic end through to the solutions end and being solutions focused. So we were asked to give our personal stories, which is a little unusual, but that's a very good place to start for all of us. So my story is thus. When I was 10, we moved house, and in the kerfuffle, a lot of things went into the loft. Now, I hadn't had a loft before, we lived in a flat, so I was very excited at age 10 to be able to climb into the loft and discover all these boxes and packages that were up there. And in one of those boxes was a huge plastic globe. It wasn't very special, and its frame was bent and it didn't spin anymore, and it was full of holes that my father and his brother had put into the globe by using it as target practice when they were kids. But it had the benefit that you could peer through the little hole and see the other side of the globe from the back. And instantly, age 10, a systems thinker was born. Before the word was invented, I realised that we were all connected and we were all living on this fantastic globe. And there was I, just this little insignificant pinprick of a person on this little piece of land that was pink for some reason. And there were all these other strange countries like Rhodesia and the USSR and Yugoslavia, which I had never heard of. And of course, that's part of our rich history. And a little while later, when I was working, I travelled a lot with my job. And I ended up working on a film, which was an adaptation of a Ray Bradbury story, The Butterfly Effect. And I realised what a tipping point was. And we've heard a lot about those today. So there I was, 15 years of working and travelling, and seeing that the world wasn't really very much like the David Attenborough films that I'd watched when I was a child. In fact, it was full of destruction and pollution and waste. And it started to really drag me down. All these beautiful places I was going to weren't really that beautiful when you just lifted the layer that was on the surface. And one day I'd taken a day off and I walked up the top of a very beautiful mountain. It was in an area that was supposed to be primary rainforest, but it wasn't, it was secondary rainforest. And I could hear the sounds of the saws over the distant hill, and I knew what that meant. And I didn't blame people locally for doing it, they have to earn a livelihood. But I knew what that meant because at home, my parents had a teak bowl that they used to put fruit in. It was an old one, we'd had it, years, ever since I was growing up, but I knew that that teak bowl had probably come from just over that hill. And it would probably be thrown away at some point and discarded. And I made a pledge. I made a pledge to the forest. I held up my hand and I said, I am going to change my life. I'm going to spend the rest of my life speaking on behalf of the thousands of species on this planet who have no voice, instead of being just one species that does have a voice. So I made a decision to switch, and I pressed that re-switch button. I went back to school, got a master's in climate change and international development, and I've been working in this field ever since. As we're focused on energy transitions, I just want to share 2 projects that I've been working on over the last 18 months with you. And we've heard about very specific technologies, we've heard about regional actions that we can be taking, we've heard about national activities, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the international work that's being undertaken. And this fits in with the policies that are trying to be discussed a little bit further down the road. And there's one example at the household level and one example at the national level. So I'll start with the household level one. So I've been working with a group called the NDC Partnership, so the Nationally Determined Contributions to Climate Change, that every country pledges to increase every 5 years, although that cycle might change. And there's a partnership of over 100 organizations, which include multilateral development banks, the UN organizations, some of the more action-oriented climate institutions, as well as academics. And they help developing countries to implement their nationally determined contributions. So I was very privileged last year to work with the NDC Partnership in the Caribbean, in the small island developing states who find this change very, very challenging alongside the economic devastation of the COVID pandemic and the other challenges they have because of the physical and the transitional impacts of climate change. So we start by reaching out to the people, by asking them how much they can afford, what is acceptable for them in this transition. You can't impose from the top down, you have to reach out to people and ask them, what is it that you really want? Do you want to be given a solar panel? Do you want to invest in a solar panel? Do you want to own this? Do you want to rent it? Do you want to lease it? How much can you afford to pay each month? Because at the end of the day, this is going to be an investment for all of us at some level. I then worked with the government to draw up some policy guidelines. which would help them move their industry into supplying the needs of the population, and then came up with what we call the Equitable leasing model, which would help transfer the cost for people over a period of time. And it's very important because you don't want those who are wealthy to slap solar panels and benefit, whilst poor people who can't afford to do that because of the upfront cost to suffer. It's got to be an equitable transition. And that's now being taken forward as part of their implementation plan. And the second example is at the national level, where I worked in Guyana, which is just north of Brazil, sandwiched between Suriname and Venezuela, and worked there to raise finance from the private sector to blend with finance that comes from the Green Development Fund. Now, the Green Development Fund is one of several funds which have been set up to support countries by giving them lower rates of interest on funds that they invest in large-scale projects to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So in Guyana, we put a package together, a portfolio package for 5.5 megawatts of solar in a mining town, 2.2 mega of hydro in another mining town, and 25 megawatts of wind power for the first wind farm to be on the coast and serve the main Berbice grid. And those projects are now hopefully being taken forward by the new government, as well as the Amila Falls, which is a large HEP plant that they're investing in, and I hear that IDB has agreed to fund one of the solar project, which is fantastic news. And I think the way I look at it is we are all working on different levels, and that's the crux of this. We have to work all together. And no matter what our religion, our views, our creed, where we come from, when we all pull together, we can see the benefits and we will walk into a different future. But the very first decision starts with ourselves. Looking in ourselves what we believe is right for our future. And I think I was going to give you a quote that Paul had said, but I'm actually going to change that because you're quite right. The best quote, I think, from Paul today, and I wrote down 3, so that was pretty good, was that we are nature protecting itself, and we are one with nature. So we have to look into our hearts and decide what we are going to do, what we can affect as each individuals, the change and the catalyst that we can become in the same butterfly effect. And look at our time and how we apportion that wisely as we move forward. Thank you.
And so thank you, Catherine. And I would like to invite a person which wasn't planned, it's outside the program, but I got to know that Mr. Shane Thompson is here. He's the Minister of the Environment of the Government of the Northwest Territories in Canada, and he has left the blue zone, which is heated, comfortable, and to support the youth in his region. And I thought that was worth a kind of recognition. So I'll ask you just to greet us for a few minutes. Thank you.
I wasn't prepared for this, but we'll just go. So I represent 6 Dédi communities in the southeast or southwest corner of the Northwest Territories. Community of 65 people, all the way up to 1,250 people. So when you look at that, Katarina, when we talked about her where she lives, actually that's where my children family is from. The Innivalid, so they are very much live there, they live that environment as well. I know in a relationship with the Gwich'in women, so I've kind of hit all over the place here. So I've been very fortunate to represent the Inuit, Dene, and Métis, and non-Indigenous people in the territories. We have, when we look at the greenhouse effect, it's 0.2%, which is just under for Canada. So unfortunately, climate change has had a huge impact on us for the last 15 plus years. We are seeing slumping. We've seen lakes disappear, that just disappear completely. We've seen people that, I think it was 3-4 years ago, where we use our roads, winter roads, to get our fuel and our supplies into the communities. We've actually seen a truck actually fall into a lake, one of our great lakes, Bear Lake. So we're seeing this environment, we've seen these things and some of the challenges. Today I had an opportunity to meet with some youth from Indigenous, I've been meeting, what's that?
Indigenous Climate Action.
Indigenous Climate Action. So I had an opportunity, and one of the individuals was from Fort Good Hope, it's another community that is from the Northwest Territories, and he sat there and said, why isn't leadership actually saying we need to get off fossil fuel? Why? Why aren't we saying that? Why aren't we making that statement? And I went back to him and I said, okay, great. So I represent, Northwest Territories has 33 communities, and when we look at landmass, when we talk about landmass, we actually are the 3rd largest landmass in Canada, behind Nunavut and Ontario. And when I say that, if you add water to it, then we're the 2nd largest jurisdiction. 3.4 million hectares burnt in 2014. Now put that in perspective, that's half of Scotland disappeared. One season, one fire. So we are living climate change, we're seeing it, and so we've gone to, we're trying to win turbine up in Inuvik. It's in the process of being developed. Thanks to the federal government, we were able to do that. We do have hydro in the southern part of the lake, and in the north, in Yellowknife, we have hydro. But the problem is that our redundancy is diesel. So 2016, I think it was, we seen a really big drought in the Northwest Territories, in Yellowknife, which then, where did we spend? We spent 4 months in the summertime using diesel. So, but back to it, it's listening to this presentation from all of you, again, it's taking that one step, that vision of going one step, and how are we going to make a difference? I tell people I'm a poor politician. I am very bad at politicians. I just shoot from my hip. I just do what I gotta do. I'm a sport, recreation, and youth background, and again, the young lady from Inuvik, Katarina, we wanted to make sure we were here to see her. I know we embarrassed her and stressed her out a bit, but again, she spoke well, and our youth need to be listened to. Because you know what? They are our future, they're gonna look after us, but we also need to look at and listen to our elders. Because our elders have poured us where we are today. They are our foundation, they are the ones that work with us. So this is all really great information. I did have an opportunity to meet with the federal government minister, Mr. Golo, and we had those conversations and talked about adaptation. And we're doing good with mitigation, but we need to be able to adapt. And that's what we're working on. So anyway, thank you very much for your time. I apologize if I spoke longer than
Thank you very much. It's just wonderful to listen to the youth, but also listen to the elders. So now is your time. Any questions or comments from the audience? You're most welcome. We have about 10-15 minutes to sort of interact. We have a question here. Yeah?
Hello, my name is Santiago. I'm from Puerto Rico. Many of you probably know that we have been experiencing an energy crisis for quite a few years, aggravated by Hurricane Maria, but it's been so we are working with civil society groups for a proposal to decarbonize, decentralize, democratize, and decarbonize our electric system, hopefully. It's called Queremos Sol, we want sun, online, in English and Spanish. And so I'm interested in learning about, with addition to this proposal, civil society proposal, multi-sectoral. We are starting to do certain pilot projects which are mostly based on distributed renewables, rooftop solar and storage, because of our situation on an island. So I'm interested in learning about rooftop solar and storage communities that people know of.
Thank you. So if anyone knows anything about that, you connect to her afterwards. Thank you. Anyone else like? You have a good voice, isn't it?
Yes, and again, just also a bit of a comment. One of the big things that so my name is Katarina Kuhnert. I'm a member of the Legislative Assembly of the Northwest Territories, so I'm Shane's opposition, really. But we have a consensus-style government in our Northwest Territories. We have no party system, so we try to work a lot better together, and I think that really is a good way to go forward in the future. I'm a geological engineer by training. So I've been in the north working on geotechnical and environmental site assessments for quite some time. And even in the 15 years that I lived in the Northwest Territories, I came from near Vancouver, I have seen changes to my own work in changing how our foundations are being designed in our buildings, as well as seeing more rain, more precipitation. We're going to have to change how we're building our buildings for snow load. That was never anything that was a concern before. And I think one of the biggest things I've taken from this conference is the intersectionality of women's rights, of Indigenous rights with the climate, and how really it can't be addressed in of itself. And engineers are notorious for not being touchy-feely, embracing our other sides of ourselves. And one of the things that I really taken from Paul was, as an engineer, he does embrace that side of himself, and I think that's been one of the biggest lessons I've taken and what I will be taking back to the territory and to my colleagues. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing today. That's just been so fascinating to hear. Really enjoyed it. I was just wondering if anyone has any comments on sort of the just transition element of this. So I've spent some time in the Northwest Territories, farming in Yellowknife actually. I've just really observed how, I've loved it, I wish I could go back there, but I've really observed how reliant the community is in Northwest Territories, in the Yukon and Alaska on fossil fuels for their livelihoods, whether that's through working or whether that's extracting fossil fuels themselves, or other extractive industries as well, really big up there. This shift is going to affect them hugely, and just saying we can't use fossil fuels anymore will affect them. If we stop doing that tomorrow, they wouldn't have any jobs, so they wouldn't have any energy. Getting food up there in planes is obviously really important for food security. So how do you address that? How do you manage that in an area where it's just so necessary? Particularly with the Northwest Territories, because I've experienced that, but I'm sure many others have experienced that in the countries as well. I just wondered if they had any comments on that.
Thank you very much. I think what we do is, Paul, you answer this, and if you have any final comment, and then we let everyone give a final comment. But not too long, because then we have also another little surprise for you.
I think you're absolutely right about the just transition. It's a very, very important thing. And we have to build the wider consensus, particularly the people whose jobs are in and around fossil fuels. So the key to it is to have the vision of what it would be like if people's jobs were jobs that were preventing intergenerational collapse. But to trigger that, what we need is reskilling. We need to set up reskilling schools where people can get firstly basic carbon literacy so they understand the problem, but then look at what's the best match between the skills they have and the skills that the transition needs. In the UK, it's thinking about offshore oil and offshore wind, have very similar skills. So it's getting that training program going. And I think, as a final comment, really, from me, we face a race between two tipping points, between climate tipping points, where things run away out of control, but between societal tipping points, where more and more people get it. The more people get it, the more it becomes normal. The more it becomes normal, the more people get it. And once you cross that tipping point, we see big changes. We've seen tipping points crossed in wind power, in solar power, where it crosses the tipping point, more people buy it, scales up, it gets cheaper, viable in more locations, the price drops, it crosses the point where the installation then begins to compete. We need to cross those tipping points, and particularly to have research about how we cross that hard tipping point that allow more people to step forward and go, I'm not happy, I know my job is doing something bad, but I have to pay my mortgage, but I'm going to reskill. And if that reskilling is there to help people, it really helps that cross. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very moving to hear all the stories from everybody. And I live most of the time in India. There are also lots of dramas are going on with climate change. Maybe I can share a bit of spiritual wisdom, which sort of puts the whole thing we're in a bigger perspective. In India, people believe in a cycle of time, and they believe that we're now in a dark age called the Kali Yuga, the age where all the karma comes up. And interestingly, karma means action, and interestingly, climate change is the bad actions of the past, and we're dealing now with it, and literally we cannot buy our way out of that, we have to go through it. And that's the transition, and in India there's a very strong belief that after this time, a new Satyuga is coming, an age of truth, and an age of happiness, and an age of beauty. So just to have this in the overall picture, and I meditate since 38 years now regular, and this gives me actually the power and the inner peace and the resilience to come to all these cogs, which sometimes have an awful atmosphere, and it's not easy to find a solution and to concentrate when such a buzz is there going on. And I personally feel that a bit of meditation, time to time, helps a lot to change the inner mindset and change also the lifestyle, which is very important. I just read an article today that so many people are not ready to change their lifestyle for climate change, They say we're already doing quite a lot, especially in the West, but we really drastically have to change lifestyle, and we all have to become example. And meditation gives you a bit of the power on the inside to say, okay, I become vegetarian, I travel less, and I bring down my consume a little bit, and all these little changes which then add up at the end of the day. So, welcome for the meditation. And nothing to worry. Thank you.
So we'll take Katarina, and then we'll have to comment on the question, and also to just give a final comment. I just wanted to reiterate what I heard from Paul about just transition, and I'll just add as well that, like I mentioned, I have family members who work in oil and gas in Alberta, and I think something that is helpful for us is to separate what is the identity of the people from the identity of the corporations, because they're not the same. And so Albertans who rely on the oil fields, they have skills that can be transitioned into a new economy, a new green energy economy. And so I think providing those opportunities for retraining, which is something that is already happening, this is a way to take people who have these skills and to offer them a place in the future, instead of to leave them with no opportunities or on the margins where they can become opponents. So this might not be what the corporations imagine for themselves as they try to portray a greener fossil fuel, still fossil fuel reliant, but more greener or greenwashed economy. So I think this is something that's interesting for us to consider. And also, I just wanted to say as well that we face a steep challenge ahead, but I do think that it's part of the role of youth to bring some energy and some encouragement, and just to say as well that our hope is just greater than our despair. We believe that we can make this change, And we know that it's necessary, and we feel that urgency. So there are many strong voices of youth in our region, and our youth from our region created a statement on climate change at our Climate Our Arctic conference as well. So I just wanted to say that I'm not only here with my own ideas, but also those of many other youth from my region. So thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you. I'm going to say again, it's about realization, resolve, and reward. Where one door closes, another one always opens. And I think for everybody who is part of this transition, if you desire something different in your future, you create the change in your present. And I just want to take us through a little exercise now, which is a bit of a surprise, it's true. I've never done this before, so okay. It's a little on the Haviv, but hey, so is the earth, that's okay. So, this is about moving from what you want, what you need, to how you experience life. So, over here, we have a question. If we were to imagine that the way you experience life is divided up into the 24 hours that we have available to us on a daily basis, how would we break that down? This is a real simple exercise. So I'm going to take away, this is a live thing, right? So I'm going to take away these numbers. Those are mine, and it's bad. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that we spend roughly 7 hours sleeping. We spend probably an hour washing and doing all those kind of things every day. And we spend a couple of hours traveling or moving from place to place. Let's discount those 10 hours. And let's answer these 4 questions. This will only take a minute or 2. What we want to do is reach 24 hours at the bottom. So I'm going to ask everybody to put their hand up when they hear the number that they think is about right. So how long in hours do you think we spend in activities to earn money? I'm going to start at 5 hours. Any advances? 6 hours. 7 hours. Keep your hand up, please. Once it's up, keep it up, then we can get the consensus. 7 hours. 8 hours? Oh yeah, hands going up now. How about 9 hours? Anyone going down at 9? 9 hours, well that's pretty, yeah. 10 hours? 10 hours, who gets a good vote, that's not good. 11 hours. 12 hours. Okay, great, thank you very much. So, probably the consensus was 8 or 9. Did we go with 8 or 9? Shout it out. 9. None? Ouch. Okay. How about socializing and being with our friends, family? How many hours a day do you think you spend undertaking that activity? Let's start at 1. How about 2? No? Okay, most people are 2. How about 3? 4? 5? Okay, so the consensus was 2 there, folks. That was a resounding one. How about being outdoors or staring at your pot plant? How about taking a walk, a hike? Climbing a mountain? Sniffing a flower? Digging your veg patch? Okay, how about 1 hour? Oh, that gets quite a lot of votes. Nice. 2 hours? 1 minute. 3 hours? Nice. You're lucky. 4 hours? 5 hours? 6, yeah, okay. That was a 1. How about helping or serving others in your community? People who are around the corner. Yeah, it kind of depends on your job, right? Some people do that all the time. Okay, we have to take a consensus approach here.
What about volunteering organizations?
Oh, absolutely, that's right on track. So, 1 hour? 2 hours? 3 hours? Might even be a 0 here. 4 hours? Oh, 4 hours, excellent. So a lot of hands went up around 2 hours. So we're going to put in 2 hours, also in the interest of time. Oh, we reached 24. So let's have a look at what that looks like. It's very important to see the difference between what you say is important to you, and we're all here on behalf of the environment, and how you spend your time each day. Now that is an indication of how you're experiencing life, right, on a day-to-day basis. Did you like that little experiment? Shall we scale it up and do our whole life? Have we got time? It'll take another 2 minutes. We can probably do the voting faster because we know how to do it now, right? Shall we do it? Let's do it. Let's do it. 2 minutes, there you go. I got my marching orders. Let's remove these because this was me in my life and that's just bad. Right, now, if you take 10 hours a day and you times that, you get to 40 hours. 40%. This is in percentage, right? So 40% is your 10 hours of sleeping, washing, doing other stuff and traveling around. So that means you've got 60% to play with. So how much of your time during your life, and this is your adult life, so this is after school and before you retire, your adult life, how much of that time, in percentage, do you think you spend engaging with activities to earn money, socializing, appreciating nature, and helping and serving others? So let's start with engaging in activities to earn money. How much of a percentage of your adult life do you think you're spending doing that? Should we start with 25%? 30%? 40%? 50%? 60%? Okay, I think we leveled out at about 40% now. Let's go with 40%. Right, that leaves us with 20%. It's great, isn't it? You see where this is going, right? Okay, what about socializing? 10%? 20%? 30%? Okay, I think 20% was about right there. Oh, look what's happened. This has never happened before. Look, this is tough, right? Look, I'm gonna be kind to everybody and put that at 18, just because you all said, right? Yeah, that happens too. But look at that. Look at that. So, if you look at those two results beside each other, you have a pretty clear indication of how life is panning out for us. So, the one question that we'd like to leave you with, oops, did I go too far? I went too far. Is how can you contribute to a healthier balance for yourself, for your communities, and for the planet by readjusting some of that time investment? Making a different choice. And you can write a note to yourself. You got to see this. It's like carbon dioxide. You got to see it. You have to see this and realize what's going on in your inside and put it out there that things are going to change for yourself, because that will be the catalyst for change across the world. Thank you.
So that was a very good ending note for our next experiment. And I'd like to do a small reflection with you, a few minutes, as to go inside and to feel the connection between you, the others, and the planet. So Golo will put up a meditation picture here. And I think it was very beautiful. Catherine put the reflection into a context, right? Yeah. So I'll ask you all to sit straight in your chairs. You can even look at the picture or you close your eyes, whatever is good for you. And I'll ask you to relax your body. Relax your legs, your feet. You feel the connection to the floor and to the earth. We can hear it starting to rain, I think. So we are happy, we are sitting, we're not outside right now. You relax your shoulders and your neck. And take a deep breath to the bottom of your stomach. And we're actually breathing the same air as everybody else on this planet. We are all sharing the resources of the earth. So I turn my attention within. And I focus on the inner self. And I imagine there is a light in my head, like sunshine. A very peaceful light. Compassionate light. And I make my inner environment very peaceful and loving. I spread these peaceful, loving vibrations to the whole body, to the chest, the stomach. I spread these loving vibrations to everyone in this room. We've been sharing and engaging. And we're all connected in here, right now, as living beings, sharing the resources of this planet. We connected as a family. And we become so powerful when we connect that we can spread these vibrations to the whole of Glasgow, to UK, and finally to the whole world. We embrace the planet, loving vibrations, peaceful vibrations. Sometimes in my meditation, I imagine spreading angel wings around the earth and all living beings. And we hold Mother Earth and remove the pain and suffering and restore balance. And our healing powers increase. we connect to the Supreme Soul or Supreme Light. Before we return back, we can send special light to the Northwest Territories of Canada, to all the people there we heard about. Come back to this room. Just pay attention to a peaceful heart. Take a deep breath. We can fill our minds with gratitude for being able to share this moment together. Thank you. So, thank you very much.